Hi, this is Astrology Intuition with Amy Lynn. I'm here to talk about the astrology for the next couple of weeks based in the lunar cycle, where we look at the new moon to the full moon and what's happening over the next couple of weeks. And today we will be discussing the full moon in Leo, February 1st, 2026, and the energies for the next couple of weeks until we get to the next lunation, which will be an eclipse. So, this is the last lunation we have before we are formally in eclipse season. We will be having an eclipse on February 17th. It is a new moon in Aquarius. It's huge. It's already kind of here. So I think we'll be talking about that as we get into the energies here today as well. Before I jump into more of the details of the transits and showing you the chart and what the energies are actually are that are happening, I just want to zoom out and just give a bigger, wider scope of just connection, really, support. It is so intense in the world. I think from an astrological perspective, there's so much heavy leaning consciousness, pulling focus into Aquarius. And Aquarius is an energy that is about the collective. It is about the public. It is about humanity. It's about caring for your neighbors. I love this term. Did anybody see this term, neighborism? I believe it was coined by somebody who writes for The Atlantic. But I love this term, and I'm like, I love, when things are in the collective, it's so fun because last Saturday, personally, what I did as a coping after a really intense emotional day in the world or in the US state of things, I just had to kind of bring my nervous system down from that. And I told my partner I just need to watch something like really light or loving or sweet. And we ended up watching a documentary on Mr. Rogers. It was great. You know, it's a mixed bag. The whole thing started in the 60s, but there were a lot of amazing components to how he really came at things from a love, heart-based, heart-centered way of being and tried to spread the energy of caring for one another, literally talking about the neighborhood, which is such an Aquarian energy. And then I just heard this morning, I haven't heard it yet, but I heard that Lady Gaga just put out like a cover of his, you know, whatever, I don't know the name of the song, the neighborhood song, the Mr. Rogers like opening song. So I'm gonna go check that out after I'm done here. But it's just funny how the things ripple in the collective and then kind of come through. So the idea of neighborliness is hugely Aquarian, and hopefully you are in a place where you can be a good neighbor. I'll just keep it to that. I've been getting a little bit more into the collective energies and the current timeline political stuff in my Substack. So if you would like to read more about my thoughts on the outer planet transits and things that are happening in the world around us, please do go there. And if you sign up for my Substack, you'll actually get it as an email. So you don't have to remember to go or use the app and have extra notifications on your phone. But I have my two most recent writings there. It's at astrologyintuition.substack.com. There's one about Neptune into Aries, and there's one about Pluto in Aquarius. And I think that they'll help you kind of go into the more longer term feeling of the outer planets as like a definition of this time in our history. And you can think about however you relate to what you're doing in your life and how you're feeling in your life, having to do with more of the outer planet energy, which has to do with collective issues and energies of the time and like that kind of layer of things. So let me just always start by coming back to when I'm doing these podcasts, why? When I'm talking about astrology, why do I think it matters? Why do I think it's helpful? I come from a background as an art therapist and intuitive energy healer. And so I'm constantly thinking of how to support humans with finding their own light, revealing and remembering who you actually are at your core, because that is where healing happens. Remembering love, connecting to unconditional love, which exists in the universe, in the cosmos. That's where these planets kind of bring their messages from and land here on the earth. So when I think of astrology, I think of both working with your own birth chart for radical self-love and acceptance for who you really are before all of the conditioning and all of the life experiences that shape the neural pathways that take form and the cultural perspectives that take form. But beneath and before all of that, you have an energy vibration that is purely you, and that can be found in your birth chart. From there, the current transits is sort of like looking at what's the weather today, but from the perspective of cosmic energetics. And I do have the belief that there's support or a benefic energy. The solar system has a force in itself that wants to continue expanding and existing. And because of that, the planets carry uh, like concentrated consciousness that connects in our own perceptions here on Earth as certain themes or certain kind of like I think of the planets as having like a persona and wanting to sort of bring teaching and guidance and support from the perspective of that like persona and what that persona would care about. So that's a very human centric way of kind of interpreting these energies. But when you can both understand who you really are and shine your own light from your own heart space, and then work with the changing tides and adapt to what's happening around us on an energetic level, it helps you lift up and out of the 3D earth mammalian nervous system kind of response that we might be having to our setting, our environment, the news, whatever, and we can put it on a higher storyline and understand things with a little bit more long-term or even soul level perspective, which I find to be helpful, both for just having a break from, you know, intensity and fear and things that are happening here that are terrible, but also giving you a sense of purpose and meaning. So when I come at astrology, I'm thinking in those ways. And then I try to bring this into a more grounded, felt sense um, experience that you can kind of like pick up in your actual daily life and understand by connecting you with the lunar cycles, which are very human. The full moons and the new moons are things that we feel. We're here in a full moon today. Full moons tend to be more um, emotional, more intense. It's a time when the entire light of the moon, well, the light of the sun is reflected back to us from the full face of the moon. So there's a revealing, there's an everythingness, there's also a completion, a release. Um, there's a fullness that comes into our lives at that time. It could be a full understanding. It could be something ends. It just depends on your own personal chart energetics and where you're working with the zodiac sign that full moon is in. This full moon is in Leo. So then we go to what is Leo about? Leo is about your heart. It's about being heart centered. It's about being courageous. It's about being in your self energy. It's about strength, but like an inner strength that resonates out, not a strength that comes from force. All zodiac signs and all planets have sort of a higher octave or expression and a lower octave or lower expression. So we can look at Leo and see a lower expression that can be narcissistic or self-centered or just like an ungrounded self energy or a selfish energy. But Leo in its highest form is the good king. It's the king that cares for his neighbors, for his kingdom. It is a lion that leads with a quiet strength and a presence, only reacting when directly threatened. So those are some of the energies of Leo that we can bring into form here. How you can work personally with the Leo energies happening now with your own chart is to understand when you look at the wheel of your birth chart where you have the position of Leo on the map, the sky map of your chart. And what do you have there? Do you have any planets in Leo? Do you have points like your midheaven or your rising sign in Leo? Do you have your North Node in Leo? What is there for you to be working with? And the full moon brings light to that, illuminates or asks you to come into a wholeness, a completion, a fullness with the energies of Leo in your chart. So every year around this time, we always have a full moon in Leo. This is like a normal Aquarius season um, happening. And there's always another way you can work with full moons that has to do with timelines. There's actually three of them. There's three timeline kind of pairings that we can go with. We can look back just 2 weeks ago, on January 18th, we had the new moon in Capricorn, and that's just a 1 month lunar cycle from a new moon to a full moon. Um, and actually, we're like midpoint. So it's actually until the next new moon, which is on February 17th, and which will be an eclipse. And so this is like this kind of culmination or midpoint of that month-long lunar cycle. Or we can look at a 6 month, a pairing across that zodiac axis where in this every summer when the sun is in Leo and the moon comes into contact in a conjunction with the sun, we have the new moon in Leo. So the new moon in Leo happened last August, and there's kind of a 6 month beginning in the new moon energies that now might be coming into a completion or a release as we have that 6 month full moon pattern. A much more powerful, stronger, longer term way that I'm really getting into working with is the lunar gestational cycles. And the new moon in Leo that would have started a 27-month lunar gestational cycle happened August 4th, 2024. And that creates, there's four 9 month timelines that connect to a lunar gestational cycle where you have a new moon, 9 months later, a first quarter moon check-in. 9 months after that is the full moon. So that's 18 months since the initial new moon event or happenings or intentions or seeds being planted. And then 9 months from now, we would have the in Scorpio season, we'll have the last quarter moon, kind of the check-in, the resolution, the integration of whatever may have been starting up and now coming to a completion point in Leo energies. So again, always what you have in Leo, but also generally understanding the energies of Leo and what themes may have been kicked up in your life that have to do with being brave, being strong, being in your heart space that are now coming to illumination. The other way that I work with the full moon is that I pull the chart, which I'm going to show on the screen here in a second. And the chart shows us what are the other transits? What is the other kind of space weather happening simultaneously? Because the moon energy makes that more personal, makes it more directed here at the planet. And I'm really excited. I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction than what I have in the past and really focus on just one asteroid that I'm really seeing as the most significant, helpful planet right now. But let me pull up the chart. So to pull your own chart, you can always put the date and the time of the new moon and pull it like a birth chart. And then you'll see um, birth chart, but it's for the time later this afternoon when the full moon is happening, which here in Colorado, where I am, it's at 3:09 p.m. Mountain Standard Time today. That gives us, when you look at the chart here, this is only going to be for if you're in mountain time, that it's exactly with this rising sign in Cancer. But I find it really powerful and fascinating that when I pull the chart for where I am, Jupiter is exactly at the same minute as the rising sign in Cancer of this full moon chart. So I'm feeling that as, Jupiter brings expansion and magnification to wherever it goes. So it's been moving through Cancer in our lives since last June and will continue until this June to be in Cancer. And that means Jupiter's been pulling focus, pulling attention, and bringing strong highlighting energy to Cancer themes, which is really about where do you find inner security? Where's your home base? It's sort of it's womb energy. It's been very interesting to have these collective, like so much energy taking us up and out into the world and out into the collective. But Jupiter's kind of saying to us, remember your base, remember going home and taking care of yourself so that you can continue to show up, so that you can continue to be a good neighbor. Um, it's I hear that in this when I'm looking at this full moon chart, I just see that very strongly as like, don't forget to come back home, rest, restore, care for yourself so you can go back out. It has that kind of energy to it. But I also think about um, providing a sense of home and connection um, to our neighbors, like making sure people feel safe in our communities. What can we do to help everyone be able to access a sense of home within themselves, wherever they are, wherever they find home out of circumstance? So when we look at this chart, there's still a really heavy pull to the Aquarius side of the chart. We have all the personal planets over there. They've been sort of doing this march or this dance past Pluto. That's been the last couple of weeks of this energy that was very Plutonian that we're going to see happening every year around this time as the personal planets move across Pluto. This chart still has a fairly close Mars and Pluto conjunction that's already happened. It's already been exact, but we're still sort of in the aftermath of that. And that's a very intense conjunction, very volatile energy when those two come together. When you bring that into a higher consciousness, Pluto is about deconstruction for the purpose of um, transformation and evolution. And Mars is about how we take action, how we use our just anger for good and for righteous, like the righteous battle kind of energy. It also could just be the sacred masculine. So, can we deconstruct what's preventing transformation of the sacred masculine to show up? One of the ways that I wrote about this energy in my Substack had to do with I'm really seeing the healed masculine show up more and more. So, that might be another little plug to go check out that writing that I did. And actually, I've been thinking about just including it at the end of this podcast. So maybe I'm just going to do that. I will read you my Substack, my most recent one, once I'm done talking about the transits, so you can hear that here. Okay. So when I look at, there's like this whole um gosh, let's see, one, two, three, four, five, six energies in Aquarius right now, all pulling on or opposed to this moon. So it's like the moon is holding so much, like I picture the moon just um, like giving its all to shine the everythingness of what we're meant to see right now. And it's a tiring moon. This is a very like holding something up until your muscles are shaking kind of energy. And where I see the exactitude here, because this moon is happening at 13 degrees and 4 minutes, the closest out of all those planets and asteroids that are near the sun and the moon right now is Vesta. Vesta's at 11 degrees, so just 2 degrees off from exactitude. And so I want to talk to you about Vesta because she's an asteroid. A lot of times in astrology, we leave out the feminine. We're not talking about, the pantheon of gods that are in the traditional Hellenistic planets. We only have Venus as the feminine, and it's such a masculine set of energies. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about Vesta today because to me, she's speaking very strongly in this full moon energy because she's closest to the sun. So it's like she's co-presenting with the sun to reflect all of the energy that we're meant, the consciousness that we're meant to understand and work with through the reflection back from the face of the full moon. Okay. So in mythology, well, actually, in history, in reality, in the Roman Empire, Vesta was the goddess of the hearth and the home, and very much like the sacred mother kind of energy. And there was a temple to Vesta that was very important in Roman Empire days, and there would be children, I mean, young girls, very, very young, elementary age girls, would be chosen or selected to it was like a position of I don't know what the right word is. You'd be selected into this position as the Vestal Virgin, and the girls were meant to carry and hold the presence to the flame, to keep Vesta's flame going in the temple. And so it was, by the way, I know there's a lot of like most people who've heard of the Vestal Virgins maybe know about um like sacred virginity. That was like a much later sort of Christian overlay of that storyline. So it really was not about that. It was about, um, I took some notes down about this. They really were the guardians of the Vestal flame, and they were tasked with maintaining continuity, safety, and coherence of the state. Interestingly. They were given enormous privilege because their role was singular and protected. So they were in a very specially held position in society. But their power came from removal from normal obligation so that they could give everything to the keeping of the flame. So it wasn't about moral purity, it was about devotion. That's what I want you to really hear here. Okay. Um, So when we think symbolically of Vestal energy, we think of a life force that only survives under the right conditions. It's keeping the flame of your life force going. It's a devotion that must be chosen, but that also is a an act of commitment. It's 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 what do you hold sacred? In modern charts, we think about this when you can actually pull Vesta in your birth chart and understand it from that direction of your own Vesta energy. And your own Vesta energy is about where your soul holds sacred commitment, or on the lower vibration of it, where is your soul leaking its energy and over giving too much or giving without consciousness. Um, it's about how you tend your own flame. It has the frequency of it is um I must protect this flame because nothing else will. So it has this like sacred quality to it that only you can know and understand and feel in charge of. When it shows up in a chart though, like we're looking at this as an event chart for the full moon. We're looking at this as collective energies. Vesta is about especially in Aquarius. Like let me add that piece in. So Vesta is in Aquarius. So this is I mean, I can't help but think of the memorials that are just kind of naturally happening in the streets where these murders are happening and there's candles lit. Like that has a very Vestal energy because there's constantly people coming to pay respects and to keep the candles lit. And it has this, that's very Vestal. Um, it's also about a place where energy stays only if it's protected. So it has this feeling of like protecting the collective good in humanity. Like, how do we hold the candle? How do we hold the light and remind those around us what matters, what really matters in this earthly experience, which is not power, but heart. Vesta is quiet. She doesn't there's no like Leo braggadocious energy about what she's doing. In Aquarius, it's like she's just blended in with the people, but still carrying her flame. Again, I just keep seeing these waves of like candlelit vigils or like evening protests with song and candles. Like something like that feels very collective Vestal energy to me. I think that this full moon also is about showing us where we may need to step into our own Vestal energies, which could be understanding it in your own chart, but it could also be showing up for your people, showing up in the collective, in the Aquarian, um, humanitarian ideals kind of way, whatever that is for you. I'm thinking a lot, like one image that comes to mind is the protests that just happened this past Friday, which were had so many young people involved and not like they weren't just trying to miss school, right? You know, they really care. Like the young people, the Vestals were, you know, elementary age kids. And but they understood that they needed to be in a place, it had like a maturity to their commitment to what they were holding the flame going for. There was a maturity to that. And so there was something in these protests where I saw this like new wave or this younger generation of young people coming forward and holding that flame to what matters. So I think that could be a really inspirational way to consider this Vestal, this Aquarian Vestal energy that's in this full moon is like, okay, we do have a lot of young people committed. That's very hopeful and positive. That's very Aquarian. I mean, when I think about Pluto being in Aquarius till 2044, I mean, this energy is going to define the coming of age of the young people who are going to, you know, live the earliest chunk of their lives is going to be in this Aquarian time. And so they're rising to their responsibility to hold the flame to what matters to them. So that's a really beautiful Vestal energy. I want to go a little bit more into a couple of the transits before my computer dies here. So a huge energy you're going to be feeling coming through after this full moon is Uranus stationing direct. This happens on Tuesday, the 3rd at 27 degrees, 27 minutes. This is the last time we will feel Uranus at this place. This will be the last station direct in Taurus for 84 years. So for most of us, we will not feel this again in our lifetimes unless the longevity science really goes wild, which it could over the next 7 years. Um, Uranus shakes us, it awakens us, it wants us to move and adapt quickly. So that energy is going to be here this week. You may already be feeling the pivots and the table flips and the twists and turns. I know I have. I usually get the energy a little early. It also has an eclipse vibe to it. Like both eclipses and Uranus can kind of do that, taking something away quickly, shifting something quickly. So we're going to have this kind of double dose of that happening. There's a little core wound energy. You may feel a little tender here too, because there's a couple of transits happening between Mercury and Venus with Chiron, which is the wound and how we heal it. It's the wounded healer. I think we're going to really notice on Friday, Mercury moves into Pisces, and then Venus is going to move into Pisces on the 10th. The sun doesn't move into Pisces until the 18th, but we're sort of closing out some of the Aquarius themes. There's going to be some turning of the page as we move to Pisces. Pisces is more, it's a water sign, it's more intuitive, it's going to be about feeling our way instead of thinking our way. It's going to be, there's going to be a flow to it that is more. I'm trying to feel how this is going to be like with the intensity of also the eclipses happening at the same time. This is a get your bearings moment again. Like it's sort of like get your bearings again, and then get your bearings again, come into center again, find your heart space again. Like that is just sort of the theme. All of February as a month, if we look at it as a month, is really shakeups, fault lines, things cracking open. Um, it's quick moving. There's going to be pivots. Like once you do one pivot, there's going to be another one. Just kind of get your, this, like the athlete in me is like, bend your knees, be on your toes, get ready here. Um, I also, maybe I'll do a special episode just for eclipse season because it's just so much. I can't go into all of it. Another thing I do want to point out too is that Mercury is going to enter its shadow. We're heading into a Mercury retrograde soonish, and Mercury enters its shadow on the 11th. That means it's going to get to 8 degrees and 29 minutes of Pisces, and then that's where it's going to go back to and as the ground that it covers during the eclipse time. I'm sorry, during the retrograde time. There's a lot of there's going to be a lot of Chiron energy in that retrograde period, I believe too. I think this is going to be more about the collective wounds, especially because Chiron has been working its way through Aries. It's been sort of the front runner of the Aries energies before we've gotten into this time where now we have Neptune in Aries. And super importantly, coming soon on Friday the 13th, Saturn will move into Aries as well. You're going to feel that. Friday the 13th, you're going to feel like it's like a semi truck turning onto your street. I mean, it just has this like presence to it when Saturn changes signs, especially in Aries. I think we're going to be feeling that. There could be some intensity that middle weekend in February. We also have the eclipse coming just after that on the 17th. This energy feels it's very intense. There's a number of transits on Sunday the 15th, one of which is the Sun squaring Uranus. So this is when we're going to have consciousness around the Uranian themes, the awakening, the shifts, the fault lines, the quakes, the something has to change, something has to give. You're this both that energy with Uranus and the energies with the eclipses, it's like you don't have a choice. There's not intention that you can sort of like co-create with. It's more getting really clear in your own energy and getting really clear with what you're seeing and reacting to or responding to and coming from your deepest place in your soul and in your heart to be in your highest good in the response to the things that are changing, to the ways that you are awakening, that the world is awakening, that the healed masculine is awakening. Let's just be optimistic here. So the 17th will be the new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius happening at 28 degrees, 50 minutes. You can look ahead at where you have late degrees of Aquarius in your chart to understand that. It's going to be opposed by Leo. It's going to be squared by the other two fixed signs, which are Taurus and Scorpio. So those will be other places to look in your chart. I do have a little side note. This is like mostly for me. I have a Cancer sun. With Jupiter having been in Cancer since last June, Jupiter brings blessings. It's a benefic planet. And I feel like we've all, those of us with Cancer, we've been like kind of waiting for our turn for like the really good thing to happen. And it kind of hasn't for a lot of us. But I do feel like Monday the 16th brings an energy where Mercury trines that retrograde Jupiter at 15 degrees of Cancer. And it's like, okay, maybe the Cancer energy finally gets the blessings. Like there's something beautiful and positive and maternally stabilizing that comes through, even with all that rockiness. I mean, it's so interesting because the energy feels so shaky and so unpredictable. But at the same time, if we think about the good enough mother energy, there's like a stabilizing that comes from the co-regulation of the good enough mother, the unconditional love being consistent. Find your maternal archetypes. Maybe you have a maternal figure. Maybe you work with your star mother. Maybe you work with um, Kuan Yin or Mother Mary or any of the, there's many mothers in the goddess energies and in the angelic realms that you can work with, but this would be a beautiful time to be working with that stabilization from the mother energy, from the maternal. Um, Yeah. And then don't forget, it's not, and I'll be doing another podcast episode before this time, but mark your calendars. February 20th is the conjunction between Neptune and Saturn at the 0 degrees point in Aries. This has such a wild card of like it could be so many things, but it really is the beginning of the new earth energies. It's potential of what's possible. It's bringing the dream into life, into reality. There's so much positive energy that we could um, find ourselves in consciousness with as that energy unfolds. It could be something that you're just really committed to inside of your own self and the work that you're doing and the way that you're bringing your heart into the world. But it could be a much bigger collective shift. So I'm still holding hope that the more of us holding consciousness with love and coming out, actively coming out of the fear frequency again and again and again, and coming back into neighboring, loving, giving, staying present, being in response instead of reaction, taking care of your nervous system so that you're not operating from unconscious fight or flight energies like many in the collective are currently operating from. Um, these are the ways that we're going to get through this together. So please take care of your heart, take care of your neighbors, be good to yourselves and each other out there. And please stick around, and I will read to you from my most recent Substack having to do with Neptune moving into Aries. And I'll be back with another podcast in a couple of weeks for that eclipse season energy. You can find me in the meantime on my Substack at astrologyintuition.substack.com. You can grab my lunar planner still, which I have available on Amazon. It's called Lunar Intentions. Even though we're already 1 month into the 3 months of that planner, the astrology hasn't even happened yet. So it's still very timely. That is set up to walk you through week by week what the energies are. And then I have call out pages for the lunations, for the eclipses. I have a lot of extra, just intuitive guidance that I work ahead in the energies and then put that onto paper for you. I thought it was really a really important time in the world to have something that you can like tangibly hold. That's $27.99 on Amazon. Um, I still have my free guide too. You can go to astrointuition.online to find my online guide to also support you with these energies. But anyway, stay loving and good out there in the world, and I will talk to you soon. So I wanted to read to you from my recent Substack. This is something you can find and read for free. It's astrologyintuition.substack.com. If you're not familiar with the platform, it's a little more blog-like, long-form writing. I'm really enjoying writing there. So I hope to see you over there, but I'm going to read to you because not many people have found Substack yet. So I want to talk about Neptune moving into Aries a little more in depth for this portion of this episode of the podcast. You may know that on January 26th, Neptune entered Aries. This begins a full 160-year new cycle for Neptune. Now, we did have Neptune enter briefly for a little bit for just a few months last year in 2025, but this is the permanent entry point where Neptune will not leave Aries again until 2039 and is here to stay. Astrologers have been watching the approach of Neptune into Aries for a long time with a mixture of awe and unease. And a big part of that is because the last time that Neptune moved into Aries was in the mid 1860s, one day before the Civil War in the United States began. So that historical echo has understandably stirred a fear, especially now with the backdrop we're in, as the country simultaneously moves through its Pluto return. This is a rare reckoning with power, shadow, and unfinished karmic material. Add to this the mainstreaming of MAGA extremism, the collapse of shared reality, and a culture saturated in threat narratives and total fear response. And it's easy to feel like history is preparing to repeat itself. But astrology tells us that time moves in spirals. Time does not move in repeating circles. So when we stay in a lower fear frequency, it feels like a repeating circle. But if we can rise above and see that there's a chance of hope, a chance for evolution into something different, something better, I think there's actually some potential here. A spiral revisits familiar territory, but from a different level of consciousness. At every major cycle restart, and Neptune restarting the zodiac every 165 years is one of the biggest. We are given a choice. We can repeat the pattern at the same level, reenacting old wounds, old wars, old polarizations, or we can spiral upward, bringing more awareness, compassion, and integration to the same archetypal material. Neptune does not ask us what we fear. Neptune asks us what is possible. Neptune asks us, what do we dream of now? What do we imagine humanity could become? What kind of consciousness do we choose to embody when the old stories dissolve? This is where hope lives, not in denial, but in imagination. Neptune in Aries specifically, the dream of courage. Aries is the sign of beginnings, courage, and will. Neptune dissolves boundaries, awakens compassion, and opens us to the unseen. So, together, Neptune in Aries asks us a profound question. What would it look like to lead with heart instead of fear? At its lowest vibration, Neptune in Aries can inflame crusades, righteous violence, and identity based warfare. We've seen this story before. But at its highest expression, Neptune in Aries births spiritual courage, the bravery to protect life, dignity, and truth without domination, the courage to act without dehumanizing, the courage to love in a world that profits from fear. The courage to love in a world that profits from fear. We are at a pivotal moment in which I believe we will continue to see this energy grow. This is where the healed masculine enters the story. The healed masculine is already appearing. For years, if you've been listening to me and following my work, you've heard me talk about the masculine wound, not masculinity itself, and not having to do with gender identity and construct, but rather a sacred frequency that exists in the cosmos, that's in all of us. So, what I've been talking about is the masculine wound in its distortion under patriarchy, trauma, and disconnection from the heart. The sacred masculine is not aggressive or controlling. He is protective without domination. He is strong without cruelty. And he is devoted without suppression of the sacred feminine. Lately, I have been seeing the healed masculine everywhere. It brings me to tears. I hope you'll look for it. I hope you'll look out and look to find the healed masculine because it is all around us. I have seen it in monks walking for peace. I have seen it in men choosing gentleness without losing their strength. I have seen it in caregivers, healers, and protectors who act quietly without spectacle. I saw it in the Veterans Administration nurse in Minnesota, a symbol of service, care, and humanity whose life was taken in a moment of collective fracture. These are not signs of collapse, they are signs of emergence. The astrology we've moved through in the past week offers something precious in these tender, tender times, grounding us before ignition. We had the Capricorn new moon on January 18th, a couple weeks back, which was the true energetic beginning of this year of 2026. This is not a year to be understood intellectually, but one to be felt, trusted, and embodied as we blast into a new reality. Mercury's intense activity recently asked us to turn insight into aligned action, to slow the mind, and to build new neural pathways that can hold complexity without panic. As the sun finished up in Capricorn and entered Aquarius a little over almost 2 weeks ago, we were asked to let go fully, to release what we cannot carry forward, to trust that something more intelligent is organizing itself beneath the chaos. And if we quiet ourselves, despite the fear frequencies that are constant in our reality right now, we can sense the quiet rising up, finally, of the sacred feminine. This is where I bring you to Venus, Pluto, and the rising feminine. The conjunctions that have unfolded in Aquarius have not been gentle. There were personal planets conjunct Pluto in Aquarius all last week and the week before. These conjunctions were not random either. They have purpose, it's just hard to see. It started when Venus moved into Aquarius, joining the goddess asteroids Vesta and Ceres. This all began around January 19th when Venus met Pluto at 3 degrees of Aquarius, just as the sun was preparing to leave Capricorn and step into Aquarius later that day. It was not a subtle combination. It was Persephone energy, innocence taken too soon. This is something you cannot unsee, feeling something you cannot unfeel. That energy was ripe as we headed into that awful weekend of January 25th. Like that timeline was when this was all the background astrology energy. It was so intense. At its lowest vibration, these transits are trauma imprinting. But at their highest vibration, it's absolute transformation of the heart if we allow ourselves to stay present to what is reshaping inside of ourselves. Here we are, living through all of it, the trauma and the transformation of the heart all at the same time. Don't let this be heart hardening. It's so easy to go into fear in these times, into defense, into protection. Let this be your heart becoming powerful. What happens here was always meant to change what you're willing to tolerate from this point forward. This post-traumatic Venus is raw and not yet healed. And right on time, the feminine begins to organize in a different tone. If you're not on the video version of this, I have a picture of the Minnesota protesters, the ones dressed in Handmaid's Tale, and like with winter layers. I love this image. I hope you can see it. As we move through the days that follow, Vesta, Venus, and Ceres came online in a rare and coherent way. Not chaos. It was a trinity forming, and it's still here. Vesta lit the inner flame first. She has devotion without depletion, sovereignty that does not need to perform. She reminds us that what is sacred must be protected, not sacrificed. Venus followed, restoring heart energy to what had been diminished. She reclaimed love as a stabilizing force. Venus does not take, she does not chase, she is magnetic. And then Ceres rose, the great mother of cycles. She governs nourishment, grief, harvest, and the power to withhold when care is not reciprocated. Ceres teaches us that love includes limits. Together, this is a feminine that is not sacrificial. It is devoted, but sovereign, loving, but self honoring, nurturing without erasure. She does not disappear. She does not overextend. She does not burn herself to keep others warm. She anchors. This is not softness as fragility. This is contained strength. As the sacred feminine rises up, the new dream can initiate. So then on Monday, January, what month is it? Yeah, January 26th, Neptune entered Aries. And this is with this trinity of goddess force and the rising of the sacred feminine holding the line and holding the heart. This is how Neptune entered Aries with this like a solemn but heart-based quality. This feels so strong to me, this threshold of energy. I want you to really feel how that energy was held as Neptune moved across that threshold just a couple days after this real crescendo moment in our collective conscious. Neptune in Aries brings us the chance of a new collective dream that we can bring into reality in 2039 as Neptune moves into the patient earth sign of Taurus 13 years from now. This is a transitional time. This dream is not yet clear. It will arrive in waves. It will be felt before it is understood. It will take time. But here we are being asked individually and collectively to attune to it now before fear fills the vacuum. Neptune in Aries invites us to imagine a future that does not repeat the past, not because we are safer, but because we are wiser. There is something else that needs to be said plainly without softening it. State violence is not new. Black and brown people have always lived with the reality of it. What feels shocking or destabilizing to many right now is not the existence of state power or brutality. It's the sudden visibility of it to those who were previously buffered from its impact. For some, this moment feels unprecedented. For others, it is painfully familiar. Pluto exposes what has always been there. 165 years ago, as Neptune last moved into Aries, people rose up against a system built on domination, ownership, and racial hierarchy. That history is often simplified or romanticized, but at its core, it was about power, humanity, and who was allowed to be protected by the state. We are not being asked to relive that moment. We are being asked to integrate it. White supremacy is not only an ideology, it is a wound, a distortion of the masculine, a severing from the heart. It's a belief system built on fear, scarcity, and the false idea that some lives must be controlled or sacrificed for others to feel safe. Pluto does not heal through bypassing. Neptune does not heal through denial. So healing white supremacy requires consciousness, accountability, and a willingness to feel what has been numbed or externalized. It requires letting the myth of innocence dissolve without collapsing into shame or defensiveness. It requires courage that is rooted in love, not domination. It's time to decide whether we will keep repeating the same archetypal pattern or finally spiral upward into something more honest, more humane, and more whole. Soon, in a couple of weeks, Saturn will enter Aries, getting closer and closer to Neptune until they have very historic conjunction at the 0 degree point on February 20th. When Saturn enters Aries, this is the reality check. On February 13th, Saturn follows Neptune into Aries and they will meet in this rare conjunction, February 20th. This is where the dream meets reality. Neptune opens the field and Saturn asks, what are we going to do with it? Saturn in Aries does not tolerate fantasy without follow through. It does not allow ideals to remain abstract. It demands embodiment, accountability, maturity. It asks us to take responsibility, not just for what we believe in, but for how we act, how we lead, and how we use power. If Neptune in Aries asks, what is possible? Saturn in Aries asks, what are you willing to be responsible to? This is a pivotal handoff. The new dream will not be sustained by hope alone. It will require courage that shows up consistently, boundaries that protect life, leadership that is willing to act without domination and to hold strength without cruelty. Saturn here is not the enemy of the dream. Saturn is what makes the dream real. This is the point in the spiral where spiritual imagination must grow up, where healing becomes work, where ideals become lived values rather than slogans or identities. For those willing to stay present, regulated, and awake, this is not a punishment, it is an initiation into a new kind of leadership, a new kind of courage, a kind of masculine that can protect without overpowering, a kind of collective responsibility that does not require sacrifice to feel secure. This is where we find out whether the dream was real, not in what we say we stand for, but in what we build, in what we refuse, in what we are willing to carry forward together. Neptune opens the door. Pluto transforms the underworld beneath our feet. Saturn asks us to stand up and take responsibility for what comes next. And this is when I get so excited about astrology coming later in the spring and later this summer. So I will keep you updated on that energy as we get closer to that time. The choice before us now, we are not standing at the edge of inevitable collapse. We are standing at the edge of a spiral. The question is not whether archetypes will activate. They will, they always do. The question is how we will meet them. With fear or with heart? With repetition or with evolution? With domination or with devotion to life itself? Rest when you need to, regulate your nervous system, let your imagination breathe again. Will we loop or will we spiral?